This is part two, best best practices to encourage diversity in makerspaces. And as we said in the first video, Ginsberg's rule number one was to assume you don't need diversity. Instead, eliminate barriers. So these are the 6 different areas where you can eliminate barriers in your makerspace. The first one is gender. The idea here is to include women by having as many women as possible in leadership positions. So both staff and students. So juniors and seniors, if you're in a high school, should be leaders as well as staff. But you should especially concentrate on having female mentors. Next thing that is recommended is to prominently display conflict resolution and harassment policies. And Ginsberg terms this as no jerks, because a study by Intel found that in makerspaces, very often women and girls are put off by many different things. So 1 in 3 women cite a lack of mentorship. 1 in 6 has been excluded for being a woman. 1 in 6 lives in a culture where making is considered inappropriate. And 1 in 14 doesn't feel safe going to maker activities. So that's where prominently displaying these kinds of things can be very important. The second part of gender is to try to offer activities that are culturally female, but do not present them in a gendered way. Don't refer to them in a gendered way. Of course, you can get in lots of trouble doing this, and it's just simply not a best practice. Invite everyone to attend these types of events. And the last one is to avoid heteronormative language. In this case, you don't want to ask a student if they're making something for their boyfriend or their girlfriend. You just simply don't want to make assumptions, especially about someone's sexual orientation. It's quite obvious, but it's important. The next area is in the area of accessibility. The idea here is to provide supplies for people with physical disabilities. We have a basic level, and on the next page we have an advanced level. So the basic level was put out by MakerBridge, and they simply say, look, you need to have tools for folks with motor control issues. You need to have furniture at an appropriate height for wheelchairs, and you should have an accessible format of text. At the University of Washington, they put together a much more detailed set of suggestions. And of course, this has to do with your audience. It has to do with your budget. But they put forward that you should have large print and braille labels for tools. You should have adjustable height tables for individuals usually using wheelchairs. You should eliminate tiny drawers that store little things that are hard for people with motor impairments to open. You should have a multiple mouse and keyboard options. You should have guards on sharp objects so that people won't hurt themselves. It's best to have high contrast, large print instructional and safety signs. You should make all tools and safety equipment accessible from a seated position. And it's important to have tactile prototyping tools available, such as clay that can be used to quickly sketch and share ideas. So lots of different ideas in that area. The third area is in neurodiversity. And here we're mostly talking about children with autism. And it could even be adults with autism, of course, but in a school environment would be children, and might be children with ADD. So in this area, we want to set aside a quieter, less stimulating space. You want to have earphones available to muffle sounds. You want to start with small details and then move toward generalities, such as an end product. You want to enlarge print materials, font size, and contrast. As a teacher, you want to check for understanding and allow extra time. You want to provide materials ahead if possible, and provide materials in more than one learning or communication mode. The next area is in the area of ethnicity. And here we found lots of different studies. One study was at George Mason University, and they talked a lot about bringing in people and resources from the community, also known as asset mapping, that this can be a powerful tool. They looked at examples from 2 different places in Washington, D.C., where local tech experts were recruited and brought into a makerspace, and also in Detroit, where a local bike program called Earn a Bike was recruited, and they did lots of work on bike mechanics. Other studies have found that promotional materials and mentors should represent the community's own diversity. So try to bring in as many people from the community as possible. And the next area is in socioeconomic status. And in this area, you should try to make, especially at a public school, all materials and technology use should be free. You should offer separate trainings for those that don't have regular access to technology, tools, etc. So if people don't have their own computers and need extra training before they do something in that area, you should have access for that and whatever else. And the last area is community status. And this is an interesting one to think about when you're creating a makerspace. You want everyone in the community to feel invited, as we'll talk about soon, that they have the keys to the makerspace. So students, staff, parents, whoever else. Allow students to share knowledge with their peers and adults, and this includes teaching. So as we talked about in gender, try to have students in leadership positions as much as possible. So in general, we've got a lot of tips, and a lot of this has to do with language. So words have the power to invite, inspire, and potentiate, but also to shut down and exclude. So try to use words like I notice and I wonder to invite and allow suggestions without shutting down creativity. Avoid repeating phrases over and over again like, that's awesome. It diminishes power over time. Nonverbal body language is also important. Should you pass a tool or allow a student to choose on their own? Keep your hands behind your back, possibly. Place a tool nearby for someone struggling, or send in a knowledgeable student to help and get them involved as a leader. If someone is stuck, ask, hey, has anyone else had this problem? Try to involve everyone else in the room. And our last slide is just something to think about. A person from Bootstrap, Emmanuel Schanzer, came up with this, and I think it's a great way to think about your makerspace in 3 different ways. So first is equity, describes who has the keys to the room. You want everyone to have the keys to the room, or you don't want to have any key to the room at all. Inclusion describes who is welcome in the room, and obviously you want everyone to feel welcome. And of course, you want your makerspace to be as diverse as possible, and that is who is in the room. So thanks for listening.